Imagine buying a brand new Ute for almost half the price of a Toyota HiLux or a Ford Ranger, driving it hard across Australian roads, through red dirt, river crossings, and highway heat, and then hitting 100,000 kilometers. What do you find? Does it hold together? Does it fall apart? Or does it surprise you in ways nobody expected? That is exactly what we're talking about today, and I promise you, some of what you are about to hear is going to genuinely shock you. Whether you already own a Chinese Ute, whether you are thinking about buying one, or whether you just want to see if these budget trucks can actually survive Australian conditions, you need to stay with me right until the end, because the full picture is not what most people think it is. Welcome to the Drive Intel. If you are new here, this channel is all about giving you the real, unfiltered truth about cars, trucks, and everything in between. No brand deals, no sugarcoating, just honest research and real-world results. Before we go any further, do me a quick favor and hit that like button and subscribe right now. It genuinely helps this channel keep bringing you this kind of deep research content, and it only takes 2 seconds. All right, let us get into it. So, the Chinese UT market in Australia has exploded over the last few years. Brands like LDV, GWM, Photon Sherry, and SsangYong, which is technically Korean but manufactured heavily in collaboration with Chinese production lines, have been flooding the Australian market with attractive price tags, long warranty promises, and feature lists that would make a Ranger owner jealous. We are talking leather seats, large touchscreens, 360-degree cameras, and towing capacities that look seriously competitive on paper. And Australian buyers noticed, sales numbers started climbing, tradies started choosing them, young families started parking them in driveways across Queensland, Western Australia, and New South Wales. But here is what nobody was really tracking closely enough. What actually happens to these trucks once the odometer rolls past 60,000, 80,000, and eventually that 100,000 kilometer mark? That is where the story gets real. And this is exactly what the Drive Intel dug deep into, going through owner forms, real service records, mechanical reports, and conversations from Australian Ute communities to piece together a complete and honest picture. Let us start with the GWM Ute, because it is probably the most popular Chinese Ute you will see on Australian roads right now. When it launched, reviewers praised its value for money, its ride comfort, and the fact that it genuinely did not feel cheap inside. Early owners were happy. The first 20,000 kilometers were smooth for most people, the engine felt capable, the diesel had decent grunt, and the interior held up well in the heat. But as these trucks started clocking serious kilometers, patterns started emerging in owner communities that could not be ignored. One of the most commonly reported issues was with the transmission. Around the 40,000 to 60,000 kilometer mark, a number of GWM Ute owners started reporting rough shifting, hesitation when pulling off, and in some cases a shudder during gear changes, particularly in the dual-clutch automatic variants. Now, to be fair, dual-clutch transmissions have given headaches to Toyota, Ford, and Volkswagen as well, so this is not purely a Chinese brand problem. But the concern with Chinese Utes is what comes next, and that is parts availability and dealer support when things go wrong. Several owners reported waiting weeks for transmission components to arrive, because local supply chains were simply not set up to handle high volumes of repairs at that scale. That waiting game is genuinely painful when a Ute is your work vehicle and you need it on the road every single day. The rust situation is another chapter that needs to be talked about honestly. Australia is a uniquely brutal environment for vehicles. You have got coastal salt air in places like Darwin and Cairns. You have got red dirt that gets into every crack in the outback. And you have got extreme UV and heat that accelerates paint and metal degradation faster than most countries would ever experience. Several owners who were running their Chinese Utes in coastal Queensland and the Northern Territory started seeing surface rust appearing on chassis rails, underbody sections, and around suspension mounting points between 60,000 and 80,000 kilometers. Now, surface rust is not immediately a structural death sentence, but it tells you something about the quality of the rust proofing and undercoating applied at the factory. By comparison, a HiLux or a Ranger at the same kilometer count in the same environment tends to hold up more consistently in this department, which is partly why their resale values stay stronger for longer. Speaking of resale value, this is probably one of the most financially important things any potential buyer needs to understand before they sign on the dotted line. Chinese Utes depreciate significantly faster than their Japanese and American counterparts. A GWM Ute or an LDV T60 that was bought new for around 40,000 to 45,000 Australian dollars will often be worth dramatically less at the 100,000 kilometer mark compared to a similarly aged HiLux. We're talking about a depreciation gap that in some cases completely wipes out the initial savings you made by choosing the cheaper truck. This is not speculation. This is something you can verify by looking at used car listings across car sales and Gumtree right now. The resale gap is real, and it is something every budget-conscious buyer should factor into their total cost of ownership calculation, not just the sticker price on day one. Now let us talk about something more positive, because this story is not entirely negative, and the Drive Intel is committed to giving you the balanced truth. The LDV T60 and the newer T60 Max have built up a surprisingly loyal following among Australian owners who use them primarily as lifestyle and light-duty vehicles. Owners who are not thrashing them through extreme off-road terrain on a weekly basis, and who are doing regular highway driving, suburban use, and occasional towing, are finding that these trucks can be genuinely reliable in that environment. When they are serviced on schedule, when they are not pushed beyond their limits, and when owners take the time to apply quality rust protection and use reputable service centers, many T60s have reached and passed 100,000 kilometers without catastrophic failures. That is worth acknowledging. The key insight from real-world Australian ownership data is that Chinese Utes are not designed for the same punishment threshold as a HiLux or a Ranger. They are built to a price point that allows for aggressive market entry. And at that price point, compromises have been made in materials quality, engineering tolerances, and long-term durability. That does not make them bad vehicles for every use case. It just means you need to be very clear-eyed about what you're buying and what you are going to put it through. If you are a farmer in the Pilbara who needs a second vehicle for paddock work and you want something cheap that you can drive hard and replace when it wears out, that might actually make sense. If you are a tradie who depends on your Ute 5 or 6 days a week for your livelihood and you cannot afford downtime, the risk calculation looks very different. Engine reliability has been a mixed bag across different Chinese Ute models. The diesel engines in many of these trucks are actually based on proven platforms with some sourcing technology or licensing from established European and Japanese engine makers. But manufacturing quality control and the specific components used in assembly have raised questions. Oil consumption at higher mileages, turbo issues around the 70,000 to 90,000 kilometer range, and injector problems have all been flagged by real Australian owners in forums like Aus4WD and various Facebook owner groups. Again, these issues are not universal. There are plenty of owners who have hit 100,000 kilometers with nothing more than scheduled servicing costs. But the frequency of these reports is higher than you would typically see in equivalent discussions about Japanese Utes at the same mileage. One thing that has genuinely impressed people is the interior technology and feature quality in many of these newer Chinese Utes. The GWM Ute Cannon, for example, comes with features that simply are not available at the same price point from Toyota or Ford. And many owners report that the infotainment systems, the cameras, and the comfort features have held up well even at high mileage. The technology side of things seems to be where Chinese manufacturers have genuinely invested, and it shows. So if you care deeply about having a tech-forward, comfortable cabin experience, and you are on a tighter budget, these trucks can absolutely deliver that. The ownership community in Australia has also become a real asset for Chinese Ute owners. Facebook groups, online forums, and YouTube channels have created ecosystems where owners share DIY fixes, common issue workarounds, and reliable mechanic recommendations. This community knowledge base has made it easier for owners to navigate the challenges that come with owning a vehicle that has a less established dealer and parts network. And that community is growing, which means the information ecosystem is improving over time. What about the warranty situation? Several Chinese Ute brands in Australia offer 5 to 7 year warranties, which sounds incredibly attractive. But the real-world experience of claiming on those warranties has been inconsistent. Some owners have had genuinely smooth warranty claim experiences. Others have faced delays, disputes over what is and is not covered, and frustration with dealer networks that do not always have the technical expertise or parts inventory to resolve issues quickly. The warranty on paper and the warranty in practice are not always the same thing, and that is a critical distinction for anyone doing their research before buying. If you're standing at a dealership right now trying to decide between a Chinese Ute and something like a HiLux or a Ranger, here is the honest framework you should be using. First, calculate total cost of ownership, not just purchase price. Factor in depreciation, expected service costs, parts availability, insurance, and potential repair bills at higher mileage. Second, be honest about how you're going to use the vehicle. Light-duty use and highway kilometers are a much safer fit for a Chinese Ute than constant off-road work or heavy commercial use. Third, research the specific dealer network in your area and ask real questions about how they handle warranty claims and parts availability. Fourth, join owner communities before you buy, not after. The people who have already driven these trucks to 100,000 kilometers have information that no brochure or salesperson will give you. The brutal truth about Chinese Utes after 100,000 kilometers in Australia is this: they are not the disaster that some critics predicted, but they are also not the complete success story that their marketing suggests. They occupy a specific space in the market that can work very well for the right buyer in the right situation. But they carry risks that are real, documented, and important to understand before you commit. The gap between Chinese Utes and the established Japanese and American competition has been closing, and it will continue to close as these brands invest more in quality and build their support networks. But at this particular moment in time, that gap still exists, and ignoring it could cost you significantly more than the money you saved on day one. The Drive Intel will keep tracking how this story evolves, because the Australian Ute market is changing fast, and you deserve to have accurate, research-backed information every step of the way. If this video gave you something useful, please share it with someone who is looking at buying a Ute right now, whether it is a mate, a family member, or a colleague. You could genuinely save them from making a very expensive mistake or help them feel confident in a decision they are already leaning toward. Drop your thoughts and questions in the comments below. Have you owned a Chinese Ute? Have you hit high mileage on one? What has your experience actually been? We read every single comment, and your real-world experience adds something that no amount of research can replace. Hit subscribe if you have not already, because there is a lot more content like this coming, and you do not want to miss it. This is the Drive Intel, and we will see you in the next one.